Welcome to Screen Scan. Today, we will recap the 2010 movie, Love and Other Drugs. Let's dive in. In 1996, in Pittsburgh, Jamie, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, works at an electronics shop. He chats up and flirts with female customers of all ages, encouraging them to buy phones and stereos. He also flirts with Christy, the girlfriend of the store's owner. Jamie and Christy go to a back room to have sex. By accident, Christy calls her boyfriend over the store's intercom, and he overhears them. The boyfriend punches Jamie, who then runs out of the store, flirting with another woman named Amber on his way out. That evening, Jamie has dinner at his parents' house. His dad and sister are doctors, and his brother Josh has made a lot of money from his medical software business. During dinner, Josh argues with his wife and mentions Jamie getting fired. The family criticizes Jamie for quitting medical school. Jamie ignores their complaints and mentions that Josh will help him start a new job as a drug salesperson. With assistance from Josh, Jamie secures a position at Pfizer following his attendance at various seminar classes. He then begins his efforts to market Zoloft and Zithromax, attempting to convince doctors to prescribe these medications. Despite his persistent efforts, he faces continual rejection, much to the frustration of his business partner and supervisor, Bruce Oliver Platt, who views Jamie as his pathway into the prestigious Chicago market, allowing Bruce to be closer to his family. Bruce advises Jamie that winning over Dr. Knight, Hank Azaria, to prescribe Zoloft over Prozac could lead to a domino effect with other doctors following suit. Despite multiple failed attempts to persuade Dr. Knight, Jamie resorts to charming the receptionist and clandestinely removing all Prozac samples from the back medicine cabinets to discard them. In the following days, as Jamie struggles to improve his sales figures, he decides to offer Dr. Knight a $1,000 bribe in exchange for the opportunity to accompany him. The doctor agrees, and Jamie spends the day enthusiastically promoting Zoloft's advantages over Prozac. Dr. Knight is about to see a patient, and Jamie, who is wearing a white coat, acts like he's a medical intern. The patient, Maggie, played by Anne Hathaway, is 26 years old and has Parkinson's disease that started early. She tells Jamie that her house was broken into and her medication was stolen, giving him a long list of prescriptions she needs to refill. While there, Maggie asks Dr. Knight to check a strange lump on her breast in front of Jamie. It turns out to be just a spider bite. Afterward, in the parking lot, Maggie confronts Jamie as he's about to throw away Prozac pills he took from Dr. Knight's supply. She punches him for pretending to be an intern and for seeing her breast. She then takes his photo with a Polaroid camera and leaves. Jamie returns home to find his brother Josh, who has just separated from his wife and needs a place to stay for a few weeks until he finds his own place. Jamie contacts Dr. Knight's receptionist, with whom he has a relationship, to get Maggie's address and phone number. He calls Maggie to invite her out for coffee. Initially, she refuses, but eventually agrees to meet him. Their date consists of Jamie being charming and Maggie acting standoffishly. After only 10 minutes, they go back to her apartment and have a casual sex. Right after, she asks him to leave immediately. Then, there's a series of scenes showing Jamie receiving late-night calls from Maggie, leading to them to have sex in various places at her request. On one occasion, Maggie arrives at Jamie's place wearing nothing but a coat, intending for a surprise encounter, only for Josh, Jamie's brother and roommate, to accidentally see everything as he wakes up on the living room sofa. While at work, Jamie is disposing of Prozac pills in a dumpster in the parking lot when Trey, played by Gabriel Macht, a quick-tempered sales representative for Prozac, confronts him with a punch to the face. Trey, who is the leading salesperson in the area, is known for giving extravagant incentives like trips to Florida and Hawaii to doctors and their staff to promote Prozac. He warns Jamie that he's aware of Jamie's actions and threatens to bring him down if he doesn't cease his activities. After a brief scuffle, Trey leaves Jamie on the ground, cautioning him to stay away from Maggie. Jamie picks up some takeout and visits Maggie at her loft in the city center. They briefly talk about Trey, who is married but was involved with Maggie, and Maggie's Parkinson's disease. She works as a waitress at a small coffee shop and doesn't have health insurance. When they try to become intimate, Jamie finds he can't perform. With a few comforting words from Maggie, they end up just spending time together, and she playfully suggests he should try a new medication for erectile dysfunction that his company is working on. The next morning, before Jamie leaves, Maggie starts experiencing tremors in her left hand. She conceals this from him as she hurries him out the door. Jamie then talks to Bruce about the new drug, and Bruce agrees to investigate it further. At work, Jamie receives approval to sell Viagra, which quickly makes him very sought after by doctors. Later, at his apartment, Jamie and Maggie have a conversation where Jamie tries to persuade her to start a relationship with him. Maggie refuses and walks away. The following day, Maggie is seen assisting elderly people onto a bus headed to Canada to buy prescription medications at lower prices. Jamie arrives and they have another discussion about their potential relationship, but she leaves again. Jamie decides to wait for her in the parking lot, and when the bus returns the next day, Maggie is moved to see that he waited for more than 24 hours. She agrees to start a relationship with him, under the condition that she is allowed to express her frustrations about him to her friends if they ever break up. After another passionate encounter at her apartment, Maggie shares that she used to be a painter, but after being diagnosed with Parkinson's, she switched to photography and making collages. Jamie reveals that he left medical school because he has ADD, attention deficit disorder. One evening, after networking at a bar, Jamie returns home and becomes intimate with Maggie. During this, he starts hyperventilating and confesses his love for her, mentioning she's the first person he's ever said that to. A few days later, while discussing an upcoming conference in Chicago with Bruce, Jamie expresses his reluctance to leave Maggie because of her illness. When Jamie gets home, he finds Maggie drunk. She had realized earlier that day that she was out of her medication and couldn't get a refill in time due to a long wait at the clinic. This leads to an argument between them, and Jamie leaves. After he leaves, Maggie, unable to control her tremors, cries and throws her glass of water against the wall in frustration. Jamie returns, comforts her, and they reconcile. Jamie invites Maggie to accompany him to the conference, and she agrees. At the conference, a woman notices Maggie's hand tremors and invites her to a Parkinson's convention happening nearby. Maggie is touched by the stories of the people she meets there, who are mostly elderly and middle-aged, sharing their experiences with Parkinson's. She texts Jamie, asking him to join her. While at the convention, Jamie speaks with a middle-aged man whose wife is in the advanced stages of Parkinson's. Seeking advice, Jamie hears from the man that he should consider leaving the relationship to avoid the inevitable heartbreak and financial burden that will come as Maggie's condition worsens, leading to uncontrollable body movements and a gradual decline towards her end. This conversation deeply unsettles Jamie. After the convention, Maggie expresses her love for Jamie and shares how meaningful it was to learn more about the Parkinson's community and to have his support, which has helped her overcome her fears about the future of her condition. Jamie, profoundly affected by the earlier conversation, struggles to conceal his newfound anxieties. In a series of scenes, we watch Jamie diving deep into research about Parkinson's disease, using the internet and visiting numerous medical libraries. He also presses Dr. Knight for information on specialists who might offer new treatments or ways to slow the disease's progression. In the following weeks, Jamie dedicates himself to taking Maggie to see specialists and attend seminars all over the country. He spends freely on medical tests for her, as well as on hotels and plane tickets, eventually maxing out his credit cards. During a visit to a doctor in Boston, Jamie loses his temper with a receptionist because their appointment was postponed, despite them traveling specifically for this consultation. As Jamie argues with the receptionist, Maggie leaves the office, prompting Jamie to go after her. They have a heated argument where Maggie declares that there is no cure for her condition and she's not enjoying their quest for a solution. Despite Jamie's reluctance, they end up breaking up. Feeling down after his breakup with Maggie, Jamie is persuaded by Dr. Knight to attend a pajama party at another doctor's home. Jamie and his brother Josh go together, and Josh quickly finds someone to connect with. Jamie, deciding to take Viagra, ends up in a threesome with two female colleagues. Later, Jamie wakes up in discomfort, realizing he's having a negative reaction to the Viagra. On their way to the emergency room, Josh drives and shares his thoughts with Jamie, confessing he doesn't envy Jamie's hollow sexual encounters. Josh admits he misses his wife and plans to return to her. The following evening, Jamie meets Bruce for dinner at a restaurant and unexpectedly encounters Maggie, who is there with a new guy she's dating. After a brief and uncomfortable chat, Bruce arrives and announces that Jamie has been promoted and will be moving to the Chicago office. Maggie offers her congratulations to Jamie before quickly leaving. During dinner, Bruce tells Jamie that he didn't get promoted and that he just received a raise. Jamie goes home and starts to pack to move to Chicago when he finds a video that he and Maggie had made of their talking in bed. He realizes that he wants to be with Maggie and goes to the dinner where she works. Her boss tells him that she has left for a med run to Canada and Jamie speeds off after her. Jamie chases the bus down on the highway and gets them to pull over at a rest stop. Maggie gets off and says that Jamie has 3 minutes to talk. He tells Maggie about how she makes him a better person, that he loves her and needs her. She starts to cry and says that she will need him more. He says that's okay, and she says she can't ask that of him. He says, "You didn't," and tells her that even if in some alternate reality there was a healthy version of both of them with no worries or problems, that he would still choose their reality and problems. They hug and kiss, and the movie cuts to yet another montage with a voiceover from Jamie. It shows Maggie and Jamie living together and Jamie studying for med school. In the final shot, there is an image of a video of Jamie talking about living every day to the fullest and how money isn't everything and you should follow your dreams.